What is up everyone? My name is Joseph and welcome to this video. In this video, I want to go over some tips and things to keep in mind while going for your first ever Zulrah kill. This will not be a full and in-depth Zulrah guide, but what I do want to do is emphasize some important tips that may help you get that first kill. These are things that I wish I had known or someone had emphasized to me as I was going for my first ever kill, so I just wanted to share them with you guys. No matter how you look at it, learning Zulrah is a very difficult experience. It's more chaotic and mechanically intense than most other bosses in old school RuneScape, and without actually having experience at the boss, Zulrah can be very intimidating. However, even with just the small amount of kill count that I have, I found that while it may have an incredibly steep learning curve, once you get past that hump of actually learning Zulrah, it turns into one of the most predictable and easily grindable bosses that you can do for profit consistently. But to get to that point requires time and experience on the boss, so I'm going to try to help you get that very first kill. The first thing I want to mention here is just don't be afraid to die. Dying is virtually safe and free at Zulrah, so feel free to go in, just experiment with different things, and when you die, don't let it bother you. I think one of the biggest hurdles I had with Zulrah is that I kept getting more and more tilted every time I died. I felt like I wasn't getting anywhere, and I just felt like what I was doing was kind of pointless. But what you need to do is just go in with the mindset that you're going to learn something, and if you die, it doesn't matter. You don't lose anything with the current death mechanics. Nothing degrades. You don't lose any money. The only money you lose is in the supplies that you used during your time alive. So if you go in with that mindset that you're going to learn something, and if you die, you die, that will help you while you're getting further and further into the boss and will help you from getting frustrated and tilted as you get into your 10th or 12th attempt. The next thing I want to mention is on gearing. I'm not going to give you a specific gear setup to use, but what I am going to say is this. If you are not comfortable with multiple gear switches, reduce the amount of switches you have. This may seem obvious, but just what I found myself doing is not wanting to lose that accuracy for the sake of an easier time switching gear. But you need to make those switches. You have very limited time in between phases, and if you're not comfortable switching all of that gear within that time, it's worth losing that amount of accuracy to make sure that you're safe. Being alive is more DPS than being dead. So if you find yourself not able to make all the right gear switches in time, just reduce them all to the bare minimum if you have to. If you can only switch your weapon and your chest plate, then just bring a two-way switch, bring a little bit more food, and see how that goes. But if you are having trouble with, multi-way switches, just reduce the amount. The amount of accuracy you're losing is significant, but it's not to the point where you can't get the kill. Again, being alive is definitely more worth it than being dead because you didn't have enough time to switch your prayer or to get your weapon equipped or to eat in the time you have available. The next thing I want to talk about is the snakelings. And this is something that I think a lot of people don't emphasize enough, or at least not from what I saw. So snakelings spawn throughout the fight, multiple at a time. They only have one hit point, but they can do quite a bit of damage, and primarily magic damage from what I've noticed. But the thing is, if you have 3 or 4 snakelings up during a green Zulrah phase where you're praying ranged, they're going to hit you consistently, and they can hit for up to 15. So even if you're using recoils, they can hit up to 15 before dying, and that can take a lot of supplies or use a lot of supplies. So one suggestion that I have is if you have some free time, if you're not being attacked by the boss or you're just waiting there for whatever reason, or you have time in between phase transitions, just auto attack one. They have 1 hit point and they'll die very quickly. So if you're using a blowpipe, you can kill 1 or 2 of them in between phases without losing too much time. And it might save you, a food or 2 in the long run, and it's definitely worth it. If you can reduce the amount of points of damage you're taking, it will definitely help you kind of manage your supplies and will keep you from getting panicked as you won't be taking as much damage. So again, if you have the time and if you find the opportunities, just auto attack a snakeling and just get rid of as many of them as you can before you take damage from them. The fourth thing that I want to talk about is how to efficiently use your downtime. And by downtime, I mean the phase transitions. So when Zulrah goes under the water, you have a few seconds to kind of mess around and to kind of get your bearings, switch your gears, switch your prayers, etc. So one of the biggest difficulties that I had when I was learning Zulrah was just damaging Zulrah enough. At the time, I had a somewhat low magic level, I think around 78, but that wasn't really the main thing holding me back from getting the kill, and I learned this as I got more used to and comfortable with the boss, but the level wasn't the thing that was holding me back. What the issue I was having was I wasn't getting enough attacks in. And the reason I wasn't getting enough attacks in is because I wasn't using my downtime effectively, which was requiring me to either eat or waste time switching while Zulrah was up and active. So amidst the chaos, one of the most important things you need to make sure that you're doing is to get in as many attacks as possible, again, by taking care of all of those items that I mentioned during the transition phases. So this is another reason that if you're having a problem with all these switches, reduce them so you have more time to get everything else done that you need to. On screen, you'll see a list of activities that you need to do during each of these transition phases, and I listed them in order of importance based on survivability. So these things are: you need to swap your protection prayer, you need to position yourself correctly, you need to swap your weapon, you need to eat if needed, then swap your gear, and then kill snakelings. And that's the order of the priorities that you should really be focusing on during your first few kills. Now, many of these can be done at the same time. For example, you can swap your prayer while running to the correct position, but you need to make sure that you're doing these in the correct order so you can survive. Swapping prayer is definitely the most important thing because the most damage you will be taking is from having the wrong prayer up at Zulrah. Positioning is also important because the venom clouds can do quite a bit of damage if you're in the wrong spot. Obviously, you need to swap your weapon so you can actually attack, and I would actually make this equal importance to eating. Since you're going to be on the inventory screen to swap your weapon, eating can be done almost in the same tick. So both of these things are about as equal importance, but you need to make sure you're getting these done. Now, the last two things aren't really required. If you're in a position where you can't swap your gear, and you can do the first four things, but you can't swap your gear and you can't kill any snakelings, you're going to be okay. Remember, surviving is the most important thing with these first few kills. The farther you can get into a fight, the more experience you'll have at Zulrah, and the better chance you'll have at killing Zulrah in your next attempt. The last thing I want to talk about is the Jad phase. And more specifically, I want to talk about why you should tunnel vision on the Jad phase. In most games, or even in other areas of RuneScape, ignoring your surroundings is not very helpful and really not suggested. But for Zulrah during the Jad phase, I really highly suggest you tunnel in on Zulrah. You ignore what your HP level is, you ignore the snakelings, you ignore everything except for your prayers and Zulrah's attacks. Now, in order to do this, you need to make sure you prepare for the Jad phase correctly. And one of the biggest ways to do this is by memorizing the rotation, the Zulrah rotation you're doing, and knowing when the Jad phase is coming up. When you know that the Jad phase is coming up, you can prepare for it in that transition phase. Whether you need to eat more than normal, drink a dose of prayer potion, whatever, you can do that right before the Jad phase. That way, when the Jad phase spawns, all you need to do is focus on clicking the right prayers and watching Zulrah's attacks. This is incredibly important for this phase because if you just miss one prayer flick, things can get out of hand very quickly, and you don't want to be in that position. The snakelings won't be doing more damage to you than Zulrah would be with the wrong prayer on, so just ignoring them and focusing only on your prayer switches and Zulrah's attacks is highly recommended. And that just about wraps up all of the tips I have for your first Zulrah kill. I hope I was able to help you, and if you have any other tips that personally helped you during your first few kills, leave them in the comments below so other people can benefit from them. Also, if you have any bosses that maybe you're struggling with or you'd like to see some tips for your first time on, let me know in the comments. Again, I have a unique perspective of being new to most bosses, so as I kill them, I pick up these things and I'm able to present them to you in a way that hopefully is helpful to beginners or people who are newer to PvM. But that is all I have for this video. I hope you guys did enjoy it, and I will see you next time.